This is Creepy and Geeky. Welcome to Creepy and Geeky. I'm your host, Robert, and on today's Christmas episode, my kids return to the show to talk about Gremlins and Gremlins 2. But first, it's time to talk to Donna about the stuff we got into this last week. How's it going, Donna?
Hey, Robert. It's going pretty well. Christmas is upon us already.
Yes,
Where did the
yay.
year go?
I don't even know. It zipped by. It zipped by and also felt like an eternity.
Yeah,
This has
it's
been an
weird.
incredibly long, very quick year, as they are most of the time. Yeah, it doesn't help when you get older either that they just kind of zip by and you're just like, okay, can you stop? I need to. I would like to, enjoy my time a little
I
bit more on this
know.
earth.
Jeez.
But yeah, no, but it's been an okay week. It's been. I have been part of the problem is that I don't have as much time lately,
Mhm.
and what little time I have has been like just in mindless stuff, so I haven't watched anything. It's been it's just one of those things where it's just like I wish I had more time to actually watch it. I don't know how people, like, I see people all the time, they work, they watch movies, and they read, and they have time to do all of that, and I'm like, when and how? Like, I wish I had that kind of time available.
I would like to say that I'm not one of those people, but I am. I work and then I come home and usually we watch something, and then when my husband is snoring, then I read in bed and then I go to
Yeah.
sleep.
Yeah.
I try to get at
Yeah.
least a chapter or two of something in
Yeah.
a night, and
I have
that's
been
how I do
yeah.
it.
I have been trying to do the same with reading. I'm reading my, eternal backlog of comics, because I continue to buy more and more humble bundles that that I never get to. But yeah, no, I have been trying to do that a little bit more. I'm gonna try in the next year. I'm gonna try to um, put more reviews up on, like, stuff like on Goodreads and Storygraph, to kind of like mark my progress in
Yeah.
terms of reading, because I've been very bad at that. I've gotten in the habit of doing it with movies, like, for the most part, like when I watch new movies and stuff, that
And you go to Letterbox and get your
yeah, I go to
reviews on.
Letterbox
Yeah.
and immediately do that. So I got to start doing that with the books and comic
I
books
mean, I don't get a
that I
lot of
read.
time. Like if I get 30 minutes of reading in a day, then I don't feel quite
Yeah,
as dull.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean?
So I've been
Like
doing that. I've been doing that much at least. Yeah, for sure. Because that's what I do too. Is like I finally get settled into bed, and then I break out my tablet and I start reading for a little
yep,
bit
that's
until, like,
exactly how
I
I
get,
do it.
yeah, until I get like a little too sleepy, and then yeah, then I'm like, okay, when the tablet starts hitting me in the face, that's when it's time to put it
Well,
away.
a good friend of mine on Instagram wants me to join a book club with her, but I was like, honey, I can't because y'all will be finished with the book before I'm like,
Right?
there's
Yeah,
no
no,
way.
same. Yeah. And I'm not in the full novel reading anymore. I've gotten into where when I do buy books, like actual prose novels or prose books and stuff like that, I buy the very short things, the small books and
Hmm.
anthologies and stuff like that, that people I know, horror writers that I know that put stuff out, like, from people I follow on Twitter and stuff like that. People like Cat Velour and
Hmm.
Catherine Silva and um, uh, uh, Ruth Anna Evans and stuff. So I buy their stuff and I'm trying to read their stuff too. But I've, like, the last few months have been like absolutely nothing in terms of reading, um, just regular prose. So I just mostly been reading comic books as usual. That's my go-to. Um, but yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah, the only thing
Maybe next
I'm
year.
really trying to get through, and it's not because it's not good, it's that I'm so tired. It's
Yeah.
a friend of mine on Instagram, Don Roth. He wrote a couple of books, and he has one that's Claire at 16, which I finished that one.
Mm.
Now I'm on Claire at 17, and there's Claire at 18 coming out, and then the movie is coming out, St. Clair. So
Oh,
I already got through the first one. I just want to get through the second one in case they
yeah.
put any of that in the movie. So
Yeah. That's
that's my
cool.
focus right now.
That's very cool. All right. Well, let's go ahead and start jumping into this episode. Like I said, we've got the kids coming on to talk to me about Gremlins and Gremlins 2, and this is our annual holiday episode. We My kids have well, at least my son has some strong thoughts about some of the movies, so so it's a fun episode.
And you
Um,
said they had never seen it, right? Had
they
they?
they they had not, neither one of them had seen Gremlins 2. They'd both seen Gremlins 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
can't wait
don't.
to hear that.
Yeah. So it's an interesting episode for sure. So, all right. Well, why don't you go ahead and start us off with your first thing this week?
So I'm gonna be honest with you. I just have a lot of trailers, but the
Same.
one thing that I did not have, the one thing that I do have that wasn't a trailer, is that gosh, it just lost my train of thought. So Severance is the Apple TV show Severance is
Yes.
coming out on January 17th, but the Blu-ray is out now for the first season. So
Oh, okay.
if you want to get, kind of familiar with what's going on and get the history of that story before the second season starts, definitely go and check out the DVD or watch it on Apple TV, however you choose. But I cannot wait to get back into it. It's kind of a surreal horror, sci-fi, mystery. It's a really hodgepodge mix of things that I enjoy. And there are a lot of really good actors on it. Adam Scott, and we've got Christopher Walken's in it, John Turturro. They're bringing on some new characters this season. So if you don't know much about it, it's about Lumen Industries, and basically the people who work there. They're the inner part of the person's personality. When they clock
Right.
out, they're the outer part of the person, but they don't know that these two people exist, even though it's one person. I know
Right.
I'm making this way more confusing than it is, but it's such a clever show. And my daughter turned me on to it, and we kind of just binged watched the first one, and now we're getting ready to rewatch the first season to get ready for the second season.
Right. All right. Cool. Yeah, I need to. It's a show that I've heard about that sounds interesting. Has a great cast, and is one of the ones that I wanted to check out, but I have yet to do that.
Yeah,
As
it was.
usual, most TV shows.
Yeah, it wasn't really on my radar at all. I heard people talking about it, so I was actually glad that I was late watching it because I think it's been off the air like 3 years. It started like during the pandemic, and
Yeah.
it's just now coming back. So I'm
Yeah.
super excited.
No, it looks interesting. Definitely gonna have to check that out. All right. I'm not sure if you have this one on your list, but a teaser, like the big teaser trailer, came out this week for Superman, the
Yes.
new James Gunn movie, uh, his flagship title that will be coming out. Definitely looks different than his usual fare. Guardians of the Galaxy and the Suicide Squad, more of his offbeat. Um, uh, Sensibilities. Looks like he's going for a different tone with this one. Definitely looks very interesting. I'm kind of I wouldn't say excited, but I'm cautiously optimistic, as I like to say.
I'm a little excited because I get to
Yeah.
see Crypto. I've never seen Crypto on the big screen. We always see
Yeah.
him in animated shows and things like that. But I like the trailer. The teaser trailer looks
No,
really,
it looks really good.
and
Yeah.
hearing that like pieces of the old
Oh man, the
Superman
John Williams
score,
score.
they
Yeah.
they got me. I was
They
like,
did.
okay,
They
we're
got me too.
definitely
No, I'm
going.
in. I'm in for it. So they definitely, it looks like a good cast. You got Nicholas Holt as Lex Luthor, and it looks like he's going to be playing it up. So it looks like it'll be a fun thing. You got Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, which is going to be great.
Yeah, I like the fact
Um,
that they gave him the little bowl
the
cut.
bowl
It's
cut,
so
yeah.
great.
You got Hawk Girl in it. You got Mr. Terrific. You got Metamorpho in it as well. So it's gonna be an interesting movie. Um, and I'm digging the Superman costume as well. It's very feels very much like a throwback to like a 30s and 40s design.
And
Um,
they actually gave him
so
the little S curl, which I was over the
yeah,
moon
yeah,
about. I was like, oh my goodness. So yeah, they got me. I mean, I
yeah.
remember seeing the original Superman. Yes, I'm that old. I remember seeing that in
Oh
the
yeah,
theaters with my mom and her being over the moon about it. And just all those the wave of nostalgia came back every time I heard the song playing, the score playing in the background. Um, and it looks fun. I mean, it's
yeah,
definitely, I'm sure it's going to be a blockbuster hit. It's something they can take your kids to. There's something people like my age will go see. It'll be a lot of fun.
yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. It looks like it's going to have a good, positive, hopeful like tone to it as well, which will be different from what we've been getting the last decade or so.
Yeah.
So, um, definitely excited for it. So, all right, what's your next thing?
So the next one I had was also another trailer. A24 has a really interesting film coming out called Death of a Unicorn.
That's on my list as well. So cool.
It looks fantastic and
It
whimsical,
does.
and it's going to get dark real quick.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But the cast is great. You got
Oh
Jenna
yeah.
Ortega, you got Paul Rudd, you got Richard E. Grant, you got I'm forgetting somebody. I'm
Will
forgetting a lot of
Poulter.
people.
Will
Oh, that's
Poulter,
right.
Tay Leone.
Taya Leone, who I haven't
Yeah.
seen in ages.
I know I haven't seen her in anything for a long time. I'm
It
sure
just
she's
looks
been
fun.
working, but it's one of those things where like they're like when somebody's popular for a little bit and they're like in everything, you see them everywhere, and then they kind of it feels like they drop off and they vanish
Right.
and they're just doing random other movies that just aren't on your radar anymore. It's like that with Peter Stormare. He was like
Oh
everywhere
yeah.
for the longest time. And I know he's been working. I looked up his information. I know he's been working this whole time, but he's been doing stuff that's, more obscure and not like
Hmm.
on the level of like Fargo and Armageddon and stuff.
Yeah. It
So,
was really nice seeing her in this
yeah.
trailer, and the premise of them, accidentally running over or hitting this unicorn and then exploiting this animal.
Yes. Yes.
This is definitely a really nice take on greed and what people will do, and I'm all over this one. Plus, it's
Yeah.
got a John Carpenter score, so
Oh,
I
I did not know that.
I just
Oh.
saw that earlier, and I was like, okay, I'm sold. I
Oh, yeah.
literally bought a John Carpenter album like 2 months ago, and I'm in love with him. What can I say?
Oh, yeah. No, that's awesome. I did not know that there was a John. Yeah, it's announced that the score was composed by John Carpenter, Cody Carpenter, Daniel Davies. That's awesome. Yeah, I am excited for that. So, and the trailer also has "Good Vibrations" by the Beach Boys,
Mhm.
which is my favorite Beach Boys song. So, uh, but you can tell I'm old because I have a favorite Beach Boys song.
I have a
So
favorite Beach Boys song,
you are
and I
old
do not
too.
consider that myself old. My mother listened to them. Okay, um, my personal favorite is "God Only Knows What I'd Be Without You." I love that. "God Only Knows." That's my
Yeah.
favorite one. Mostly
Yeah,
because of
no,
Love Actually, but
yeah,
that's okay.
yeah. No, I like Good Vibrations just because it's like it's got so many weird like
Layers,
layers
like
going
you
on it.
hear, like
Like
it sounds like a theremin is going on it.
it's just yeah, no, it's just a masterpiece of sound. So yeah, no, I love that. All right, yeah, no, that was also on my list. So I'm glad we had that. I don't think I mentioned this last week, but I might have. The new there's a new Karate Kid movie coming out called Karate Kid Legends.
Oh
And the
yeah,
trailer dropped for that last week as well. And this is uniting both Daniel from the original trilogy with Jackie Chan from the remake or reboot, whatever you want to call it,
right.
the Legacy sequel. That at one point was presumed not to be part of the Miyagi verse, but is definitely now part of it. So it looks interesting. It looks really good. It looks like Jackie Chan is recruiting Daniel Jackie Chan's character is recruiting Daniel to help him train um, this kid for whatever reasons, but they're combining the kung fu and the karate together. So I'm like, all right, this actually sounds cool because
Yeah, it does.
realistically, the Jackie Chan movie should have been called Kung Fu Kid, not Karate Kid.
Not Karate Kid. Yeah.
There was no karate in that; it was all kung fu. So, but yeah, no. So it looks interesting. I don't think they're pulling anybody else from like Cobra Kai or anything else like that. I think it's just solely Daniel, and it honestly just it really feels like a Jackie Chan. It feels like a sequel to the Jackie Chan movie where they're just
Hmm.
okay. Let's just pull in Daniel to make it connect.
Right,
So
exactly. Now that we have the success of Cobra Kai behind it, why don't we
right,
just throw him in the mix?
right.
And
So,
that's not
but
bad. I'm
no,
surprised they
I'm here
waited
for
this
it.
long to throw him in with any of these movies.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely here for it. So, Cobra Kai is a great show. I enjoy that. I'm all caught up on that. I'm waiting for the last batch of episodes to finally drop. To for the finale of it. So I don't want it to end, but it will end. And so I'm like, okay, I'll watch it. So, all right. What else do you have?
So the last one that I have is a trailer dropped for a movie that will be debuting on Shudder in January, and it's called Grafted. Have you heard of
Hmm.
this one?
No, I have not.
Might not be up your alley because it is pretty much a body horror kind
Right.
of film,
Sounded like it.
but a lot of people are touting it as a mix of The Substance with Takashi Miike with Mean Girls, which basically
Mm.
is exactly up my alley because I like all of those things. But we basically, if you get a chance, watch the trailer. It is a little gory, but we have a Chinese student on a scholarship that has to go to New Zealand. She's trying to pursue her medical career, and she has a facial birthmark, kind of makes her a target for her cousin who's very beautiful and popular, which this girl is, her cousin is not.
Yeah.
And she uncovers a few things that her father did about skin grafting and basically wants to make herself beautiful. And of course, it's not going to go right. It's going to go 100% wrong. but
Right. Yeah.
but it looks very interesting. It's directed by Sasha Rainbow. This is apparently her directorial debut. She's only done a lot of short films. She's a New Zealand director, but I'm excited. The fact that it's coming to Shudder, I believe, like the end of the month. So definitely check that out. Called
Yeah.
Grafted. Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Cool. Um, I also have one last trailer. It's for a movie called Bystanders. Bystanders. It's a rape revenge film by directed by Mary Beth McAndrew and written by Jamie Alvey.
Hmm.
And Jamie Alvey also is one of the stars of the movie. It looks really good. It's like the thing says a group of murderous frat boys gets more than they bargained for when they cross paths with a couple coming home from a wedding. So sounds
I'm gonna have to check this out.
yeah, yeah, it's a good trailer. Doesn't tell you a lot, tells you just enough. Um, looks really good. So um, but definitely should be a lot of fun. I've talked to Jamie briefly. I need to see about getting her on the podcast also um, to talk about the movie. So
Yeah, that would be a great idea.
yeah. So, but that's all I have today. Um, not a whole lot. Like I said, it's mostly trailers, um, and hopefully we'll see what happens in the new year. We've got one more episode after this. Let's go ahead and you tell us about what's coming on your show, and then we'll finish up with what's coming up on my next episode. So, what do you have coming
So
up next this week on your show?
this week on mine. So I'm talking about one that I know you've already talked about, but because it takes place about 11 or so days before Christmas, I wanted to talk about it, and that would be Night of the Comet.
Ah,
Um,
yes.
because I haven't talked about that yet, and I love that movie, and I don't know what the hell's wrong with me. I have not talked about it yet, and I figured why
And
not
it's
throw it in the
definitely
mix?
a Christmas movie for
It
sure.
is a
Yeah.
Christmas movie. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about because those
Awesome.
two girls are just the best thing I've ever seen on the screen.
Yes, yes.
And my kids and I recast this movie all the time. We're like, we don't like remakes, but I already know who I would cast in both of these roles, and I went on ad nauseum about it. So
That's
you'll
so
get to
funny.
hear all of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I can't wait to hear that. Yeah, no, that's a sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah, Night of the Comet is a great movie. I did that episode. We did Night of the Comet, Night of the Creeps.
Creeps, yep.
Preston Fossil and I did that episode together. So
Yeah, I like that episode a lot.
yeah, it's good. It's a good fun episode. All right. Well, on our next episode here on that will be dropping a day earlier than the usual every Wednesday. Uh, so next Tuesday on the 31st, New Year's Eve, uh, will be our top 10 horror of the year with me and
Woohoo!
Donna. So yeah, so we will have a lot of fun counting down our top 10 plus our three new to us movies that we watched this year, three movies that came out in previous years that we just watched this year that uh, we couldn't stop thinking about. So that's should be a lot of fun. Hopefully, it won't be too long. I'm anticipating at least around 2 hours episode. So, plan accordingly. But yeah, should definitely be a lot of fun. Those episodes are always a lot of fun for me. Um, Talking about trying to see where they match up, where they don't
Where
see
they don't.
because they never match up fully.
Never
We
do.
always have we have a lot of the same movies, but never in the same place.
Nope.
So so yeah, definitely. Although I feel like we might have the same, maybe the same top one. I don't know. We'll have to see.
I don't know. Maybe.
Maybe.
We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. So it should be a lot of fun. Donna and I have a lot of fun with those episodes. Go back and check out the previous 2 years if you haven't heard those ones, because those are a lot of fun. So, all right, guys. We will talk to you next week. And until then, stay creepy. It's that time of year again where I subject my children to holiday horror movies and then talk about them. If you've been here a while, you know who my kids are. But if you're new here, my kids have been on the show quite a few times, especially in the beginning when they put up with me a lot more. Welcome back to the show to my son Harrison and my daughter Katrina.
Hello.
Hello.
Not don't everybody go at once. So yes, so we've done this quite a few times. We do this every year. It's like it's our weird family podcast tradition now, that I force them to do every year. um but so we've already covered things like we covered Krampus, we've covered all three of the Black Christmas movies, we covered all five and the remake of the Silent Night Deadly Night movies, and we also covered Christmas Bloody Christmas last year. So we've been doing a bunch of weird Christmas movies, but this year we're doing Gremlins and Gremlins 2. And now I know Gremlins 2 isn't technically a Christmas movie because it's not set at that time at all. But it, you can't have one without the other, in my opinion. So we watch those all separately, like we always do, because timing and everything mostly, but also so that we try not to talk to each other before the podcast. But that being said, I felt it was time to do Gremlins, especially because I just did a series on kinder trauma, 80s kinder trauma movies, and Gremlins fully sits within that. So this is kind of a combination of holiday horror movie episode plus a addendum to my 80s kinder trauma series. So if you were questioning, hey, why wasn't that movie in there? This is why. So, all right. So real quick, let me get your quick thoughts, like, yay or nay, about these two movies. Let me go ahead and start with you, Katrina. What, did you like these movies? Were they dumb? What did you say? What do you think?
Um, I I honestly didn't have a lot of expectations going into watching them. I hadn't like watched the trailer. All I knew was that I had watched at least the first one when I was younger,
Right.
and I only remembered the furry, the
Gizmo?
Mogwais.
Yes.
And so that's all I had remembered from it. I hadn't remembered anything else. I hadn't even remembered the Gremlins part of Gremlins. So,
That's funny.
but I think the first one was okay. I don't know. Like they're supposed to be like comedy horror things, and
Right.
I honestly, it's I don't know if they're meant to be kids' movies. I assume they are in some sort of way, but it just felt very like lowbrow, lots of like fart, burp, like slapstick kind of stuff, and I don't always find that kind of stuff that funny.
Right.
Um, and so whenever it was like trying to be funny, it just kind of fell flat for me.
Right.
Um, More of the funny stuff happened with the human characters than with the gremlins. So,
Right.
like I thought that the father's inventions and stuff were funnier than the gremlin antics that were going on in both movies.
Right.
And um the second movie was just very strange. I I there was honestly like I understand that it's called Gremlins and so you expect there to be a lot of gremlins. It felt like too much in the second one. Like it just felt like a lot of
Right.
gremlin and not a lot of like story, I guess. Like
Right.
I had the audio playing on my phone instead of through the TV because you can do that through the Roku app. And I swear to God, the entire time I was listening to it, I was like half paying attention, I'll be completely honest, because it started out and I was just like, I watched like the first 20 minutes and I just lost like a lot of interest because it already felt like it was heading that direction.
Right.
Um, and but the entire time I was listening to it, it was just mostly the gremlins making their weird noises and the mogwais making their weird noises. And then all of a sudden, one of them was talking, and then I started paying attention a little bit more.
That's funny.
But
Uh,
I was just like, what the fuck?
right.
So I don't know. They were very strange. I think that the humor was not
So it sounds like for the most
there
part, these
quite
movies
yet.
didn't really land for you at all. Like you
No,
probably not watch these again.
I think probably when I was younger, it did. Because I recall after having watched the first one, we went out somewhere and in Georgia, there's always like tons of hills, and there's
Right.
this shopping area that has this huge
What's it called?
the
The
grass it was
okay.
like curled over and it looked like Mogwais. And I remember saying when I was like, I don't know how old, like 8, 10, I don't remember.
Mm,
It was just like those look like gremlins. And you guys were like, what? And I was like, like the fur, like because I was thinking of the gremlins when they first like
right.
popped
The
out
Mogwai.
of
Yeah.
Gizmo,
Yeah.
like when they weren't like fully formed yet and just those little tough like puff like hair tuft balls.
Right. Right.
Um, but yeah, but I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe if I watch it again like later, like maybe in summer next year, I don't know. Maybe I'm just
Yeah.
not in the right headspace for it. I don't know.
Yeah. No, and that could
But
be too. Like I get that. Sometimes you watch a movie and you're just not right. You're not in the mood for it, or you're not in the right headspace for it. I always try to give movies at least two watches so that I
mhm.
can see if it lands the same way the second time, then I know it's just not for me. Whereas um, if it's better than after the second time, then I'm like, okay, this actually I just wasn't in the right frame of mind for it at that
Yeah.
point.
I do
So,
think that the second movie had a better budget.
oh yeah, no, for sure. We'll get into that. What about you, Harrison? What did you think of these two movies? Like just a overall. just kind of a
Well, in terms of comedy horror, both of them accomplish their objective to a degree. I would say that they're more comedy than horror,
sure.
and the second one accomplishes that goal better than the first one, because the first one I found myself.
I'd argue that the second one is way more comedy than even remotely horror. It's like got horror, like tiny bits of horror aspects, but it's mostly comedy, for sure. Whereas the second one, like, but go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
You're fine. So I for me, oh, hold on. Am I coming through?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Um, for myself, I tended to find while watching the first one to be questioning the events and the inaction of some of the characters rather than actually being able to get into the film or accept it on its terms, versus the second one where people reacted in a more authentic way despite the comedic surroundings. And so that's my opinion on both movies, in that for the first movie there was a lot of times where I was just like, why is no one doing anything, or why are they doing this, or why were they
Right.
doing that? And with the where instead with the second one, it was a much better film. It was much more cohesive. The actors were doing a much better job. It felt like they had a better script. It felt like they had a better like understanding of what they were trying to kind of do with Gremlins. Um, and I know that there's some aspect to Gremlins too, where it's somewhat of commentary about the reaction and the like process of Hollywood in the creation of Gremlins one.
Right.
But
Yeah,
in
we'll get
terms
into
of which one is the more enjoyable one to watch, it's Gremlins 2, in my opinion.
For you, yeah. Yeah, I'm of the opposite opinion. I tend to enjoy Gremlins, the original Gremlins, more. I understand what you're saying about it. There is a lot of inconsistency. There's characters that drop in and drop out. And there's a reason for that. Not a good reason, but there's a reason for it. And then but whereas number two, to me, is a parody of the first one. And while it has its charms, it's I don't feel it doesn't quite connect for me when watching it.
Just to
Yeah, go
chime
ahead.
in, I kind of felt similar where it felt like a parody because in that first 20 minutes of me watching it, I was like, this feels like they tried to redo it, but make it
Right.
more comedic.
Right. And we'll get into that because Harrison read something on Reddit that I want to talk about. But yeah, no, there is a reason for that. There's very good reasons for all of what happened with both of these movies, good and bad. And they're very interesting. So the first Gremlins movie came out in 1984, the same week as Ghostbusters. The original Ghostbusters
Oof.
movie came out. So yeah, it did not do well against Ghostbusters, but Gremlins still was the number 4 movie of the year. So it did very well during the year it came out. It was a strong movie, even though it lost the weekend to Ghostbusters. It still did well. It obviously it came out during the summer of 1984 because they were trying to put something out there, because Ghostbusters was coming out, and this was also the year that I believe Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom came out. So they were trying to put something. Warner Brothers was trying to get something out to you know during the summertime to combat against those other two as well. And but they had, I think it was intended to be, it was put out during Christmas, but they had pushed it forward for that reason. This movie was written by Chris Columbus, who goes on to write and direct, I believe, both of the first two Home Alone movies. Definitely the first Home Alone movie. This was also produced by Steven Spielberg. It was one of the first Amblin Entertainment movies through his own production company, and so it's interesting the pedigree that it has as well. Joe Dante is the director on this. Joe Dante had previously done The Howling, the werewolf movie, The Howling, and so, but he has an interesting sensibility with stuff. There's a lot of comedy in his movies as well. He's done a lot more comedy tinge things. So that's why there's a lot of that in there as well. This movie was much darker in its original conception. There was a lot more that was supposed to be more horror, but they toned it down. The studio wanted it to be more family friendly, so they toned it down as best they could. They took out plots, they took out characters, stuff that was already filmed, and then they cut it during editing. That's why that character of Gerald, that is like the douchey guy at the bank. His character's like introduced and then dropped and like gone out of nowhere. The kid, played by Corey Feldman, his role was bigger, but also was cut. The reason why him and Billy are even friends is because the Billy character was originally supposed to be the same age. He was supposed to be like a middle schooler, but then they aged him up. So that's why there's some weird inconsistencies in the movie like that. Is just things were toned down and changed for pacing and for other things. The typical Hollywood crap. So that helps explain some of that anyway. But yeah, no, it definitely it was mega popular. I remember it just being like everywhere, always. Like I even had the some of the read along record books that they had, like the books that came with a vinyl record, and it would read the story to you while you read along with it. So yeah, it was to me, it was one of those movies that was great. It was I know it's something that we briefly touched on outside of the podcast, Harrison, that you didn't find it scary. It's not really scary. There's moments that are scary, probably to kids. This is why it's part of the 80s kinder trauma in my mind, is because they did kind of gear it towards kids, and so there's definitely some horrible moments for like kids under a certain age. And that being said, this is one with Temple of Doom that these are a couple of the movies that ended up changing the rating system, because this movie wasn't hard enough for an R, so they rated it PG. Parents were taking their kids to it and they're like, this is way too graphic, this is way too scary. And so then the MPAA changed the rating system and added the PG-13 rating, in part because of this movie. So anything you guys want to add on top of what I just said?
You go.
I mean, I'm just ready to pick these things apart.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, go ahead. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, you start telling me what you liked, what you didn't like. Now that I added all that to it.
For the second one,
Well, no, let's talk the first one.
Okay. Harrison, you can start.
Okay. So firstly, I want to say that I watched both of these movies in the presence of a 3-year-old. So I am continuing the 80s kinder trauma
Yes.
to my own son.
And he loved the first one. He loves that first one.
Yeah, so
he loves it so much. He loves the music. He's been playing it on his tablet like nonstop since. It's hilarious.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, definitely latched on to the Mogwai, and because we introduced the movie to him by saying that it's a movie about taking care of your pets correctly, and that otherwise they're going to turn into scary pets.
Oh my gosh.
And so he took that a little to heart. So now he's definitely latched onto it. With that in mind, Uh, I so for the first movie, I watched it with my wife, who's somewhat of a neutral party in terms of all this, and because she's not necessarily affiliated with the
Switzerland.
podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. Um,
So you said neutral party.
sure. Yes. Historically. Um, but in any case, we both did not like the first one. The first one felt like it was this strange fever dream of like strung together events, and you describing how much studio interference there was, it makes a lot of sense in terms of why certain characters get introduced. I completely forgot about the jerk from the bank,
Yeah,
to be
Gerald. Yeah.
completely honest.
Yeah.
I found that the movie kind of kills itself before it can get interesting, in my opinion, because what ends up happening inside of the film is that we essentially spend a lot of time playing around with the rules of the Mogwai as like things start to get broken, and we start to realize like what does happen to a Mogwai when it gets wet, what happens
Right.
when they eat after midnight, and so they're establishing everything, and then we get the batch with Stripe, we get the 5 with Stripe, and within about 5 to 10 minutes after they are hatched and are let loose around the house, 3 of them are absolutely murdered by the mom.
Now, this is a part that I want to talk about because the mom is a freaking badass. Like,
She
she
is.
literally dispatches 3 of them in the kitchen, like, no sweat. She doesn't back down. She is like on them, like, super quick and just like takes them out. Like, when we're talking about like badass, like heroines of the 80s, she
She
never
is the
gets
final
talked
girl
about.
for this movie.
She never gets talked about. Yeah. And so, when she should be up there with Ellen Ripley and like Sarah Connor, man, because she's like taking these suckers out.
Now
And
the
so no, it's great.
problem is that it lowers the stakes of the movie considerably, because it immediately goes from, oh no, the gremlins are out, to, oh, you can dispatch these things pretty easily, you could just shove one into the microwave, and then
I
like
mean,
it's
sure.
so for me it doesn't seem that impressive, and then it actually undermines the rest of the film when we see Billy get like pushed around by these things,
Well,
because as we're seeing Billy get pushed around, the only thing that I kept saying throughout the whole movie was, I was like, Billy, do something, your mom killed 3 of these things, like you can't stand up and
sure.
do anything.
She killed 3 of them, but Stripe almost got her. And that's the one he's fighting the rest of the time as well. So, that's the thing. Stripe is way more deadly, way more calculating than
I never
any
got
of the
that
other ones.
while watching it. I never got that. Stripe felt just as silly and goofy and
No,
as
he's hiding
vulnerable
in the
as the
tree
rest.
and jumps out at her and nearly chokes her to death with the lights. He's the one who like is like slashing at him and like getting away from him at the pool and everything, jumps in the pool to create more of him. And at that point, it's just sheer numbers. So I mean, they're just taking out everybody else. Now, to be fair, like most of them, like you don't see that many people die on screen. You're just presumed that there's a bunch of people who did die. You do see a couple of people die. The science teacher and Mrs. Deagle die. And Mrs. Deagle's death is like great. It's a great sequence. Not just because of the comeuppance, but just because of just the gremlins just all attacking her and her freaking out because she's like trying. She's like, no, it's not supposed to be happening now. So she's like she's made some kind of deal with the devil or something. Um, it felt like
Funny.
that. Like I only noticed it on this watch. But
Yeah, that was the
um,
vibe I was getting too.
yeah. And
That's
so
funny.
it's so there's definitely a level of cartoonish violence to this, more so than like really any real danger. Um, and so I get your criticism, but I think that's part of it also, is that the level of violence is supposed to be cartoonish. Obviously, when we go into the next movie, they've amped that up, and there's a
So
level of that to this. Is what I was going to tell you before, Harrison, because you brought this up and you said, because I told you about how the Warner Brothers logo was used differently in this one than it had been up to that time. And there was a reason for that, because he did kind of want this to be Looney Tunes-esque in a way, the director
Which
did.
to me, the second movie does way better than the
Right.
first one. The first one doesn't feel like a Looney Tunes cartoon. It just kind of feels like a subpar studio interference horror comedy. Like it doesn't feel like it had the room to breathe to be able to do what it wanted to do.
Sure, sure. I
And
get what you're
then we
saying.
get to the second one, and the second one feels like I would see that on TV as a Looney Tunes cartoon, just a very high budget one.
I think there's a
Um,
middle ground between these two movies where there's a fantastic, even better movie. Because for me, number two is too much. It's too off the rails. Like I said, it's because it's a self-parody of the first one in a lot of ways that I think it goes too far. And it leaves me out of it because I'm not as engaged with it. But I think there's a middle ground where you could make something really horror with it, but also still have a playful edge to it, without all that studio interference.
okay, so
So,
then that actually prompts me to ask you this question, because this is something that I kept asking you, but you didn't want to talk about until the
mhm.
podcast. Um, why? Like, why do you find the first one to be more of a compelling movie experience than the second one?
I like the aspect of it that it's like this, small town, that's just being beset by you know, these evil creatures. Like I said, I think that it could have gone darker for me, like it could have gone a lot darker. But they were obviously going for more of a family friendly ish movie. And I'm sure there's some nostalgia in there as well. That I this is a movie I liked as a kid, and I'll continue to like it as an adult. It's one of those things where I think that it just hits more of my stuff, more of my like buttons, and even with whatever narrative inconsistencies there are, I can excuse those because it's entertaining enough for me. So,
So I find that really interesting, because I find this to be the Goonies of horror movies, where
but here's the thing: like I rewatched Goonies recently, and I actually enjoyed it more than I had the few previous times I'd watched it, and actually come back around on that. So,
but that's what I'm saying, though, is that the
right,
Goonies is a movie where when you watch it as a kid, you form a very solid connection with it.
sure,
To the point where when I was growing up, I kept wanting to have an attic inside of a house for the off chance that there was a treasure map
uh,
in the upstairs. And so you form a solid experience with that movie, and you bring that with you as you grow up. Now, with Gremlins, absolutely. There's so much in Gremlins that would absolutely latch onto a kid's mind. All the rules, the fact that it's this like quirky pet that just kind of got like a dark side to it, and then they didn't go too dark with it, so it just seemed like it would be this like crazy pet who would like drive people's cars into their houses, or like turn someone's like step mover like to 11 and have them shoot out the window. And so there's a lot of stuff like that in the movie where it just kind of like it feels like it wants to be this Looney Tunes cartoon where it gets these kids to kind of laugh at it and have a good time, but then it frames itself in this poorly structured narrative where the characters don't really feel like they're like doing much until the theater scene. And
right,
then the theater scene kind of brings it to a head where it's like, okay, finally Billy did something. And finally the characters are actually doing something to stop the gremlins. But the movie to me escalates too quickly without any real like, I think all of those scenes that you said were cut are the deciding factor for me, is that Gremlins 1 is a weaker film because it had all of the scenes that should have been in it to showcase the chaos.
Right.
And then instead we just get a couple scenes where a cop car crashes and we just see people running around going, and
No,
things
this
are
is
on fire.
here's the thing. This is just going to come down to personal preference. If the movie works for you, it works for you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like I get it doesn't work for you. It works for me.
But like essentially my point is I think it works for a kid. It works very well for a kid, which is why even my 3-year-old is super
Sure,
compelled by it and is really into it.
sure.
Um
But you get like, but here's the thing. It also works for a lot of adults. I know there's a ton of adults who still like it, who've watched it for the first time as adults and still enjoy it for what it is. It's to me, it's one of those things that and part of it may be it's not necessarily nostalgia because they're only watching it for the first time now, but it's like it tugs at those kind of nostalgia beats for you. It's kind of quaint, kind of a throwback to older movies and stuff like that. That kind of, it's a feel good kind of like scary goofy movie. So I think that's why it does connect with even adults now. So it's not just a kids movie. So
and I'm not trying to say that Gremlins 1 is a movie that is completely not worth watching. It is worth watching. It's just one of those things where if you're going into it expecting a cohesive narrative in terms of the
I go
plot of it, it's
right.
it's mainly just weird inventor brings strange pet home. Strange pet gets wet, then strange pet eats after midnight, and then
No, it's a
chaos.
very
And
simplistic
so
movie with rules that are
it,
very nebulous.
yeah, yeah.
And that's why in the second one they get mocked. So I mean, and again, this is why two is such a parody of the first one. And so, Katrina, do you have anything you wanted to specifically say
Um,
about number one? No, I'm sorry, Harrison. Were you done? I
I feel
didn't
like
want
I've
to
talked
step on.
enough. I can,
Okay.
I have one more thing to say. I have one more thing to say about Gremlins 1, but
you
I
Okay.
could
know
say
that
Yeah.
it.
Katrina
You
probably.
can no, you can say it before you say it.
Oh, I was just gonna say, what the hell was that? Out of nowhere, dark Christmas monologue that came from Kate.
That is one of
Uh,
the funniest fucking things that people still bring up to this day. It's one of the greatest moments in this movie because it's one of the things that makes it the one of the best kinder trauma movies of the 80s because it's like essentially like you're this happy, like not happy, but like you're going along with this thing and you're just like everybody's as an audience member, you're going along with it and you're having a good time. Things are happening. And then she brings it so far down with that story. It's just like out of the
well,
blue, like, what in the hell?
well, to
Bad Christmas
Trauma
story.
dump.
Well,
Yeah.
to me, to me, that's actually one of the funniest scenes in the movie, and
No.
and to me, the reason why is because Billy's in the background trying to set up the like firebomb
Right.
inside the theater, and she's just going on about this
Yeah.
like dark Christmas backstory, and then he eventually gets back to her, and he's just like, "Hey, Kate, can you help me?"
Yeah. Yeah.
and and I'm like that is the funniest part of the movie to me because it comes out of left field and it feels I couldn't tell if it was intentional that her having this weird trauma dump at this particular moment where it was just not the time
Right.
to do it was
Yeah.
intentional or if they were just like, well, we gotta put this in at some point and
Well,
this seems like the best scene to do it.
I read up on this and I like it was so funny too because there was something about it that the studio wanted them to take it out, but they said no. Um,
That's the
so
thing that they fought hard for.
yeah, yeah, and they really wanted that one. Um,
I mean, it's
it's so
great.
funny. Um, so, um, yeah, no,
Like
see, here's
to
the thing. One
me
of the
it to
studio
me
notes
it's
that they got was that there were
okay.
too many gremlins. And that Spielberg suggested cutting them all out and calling the movie People. So, I mean, that's how dumb the studio was on this whole thing. So,
Yeah. Well, and so to me, the Santa Claus, the Santa Claus backstory is on par with the Silent Night, Deadly Night, Santa shooting
yeah,
in both equally comedic and horrific.
Yeah. So here's exactly what it is. So the studio wanted to have it removed, but director Joe Dante, however, stubbornly refused to take the scene out, saying it represented this movie as a whole, which had a combination of horrific and comedic elements. So there you go. It's exactly what it was meant to be. It was meant to be like, what the fuck? And make you have this like nervous, like horrid laughter. Like, that's like insane, you know? So Steven Spielberg didn't like the scene, but he decided to let him keep it in. So
Okay, so but that needs explanation then, because is the story itself the horror comedy, or is the timing the
it's the
comedy?
combination, the whole scene as a whole. It's the timing
Okay.
of the story. The
Okay.
horrible story at the wrong fucking time.
Okay.
So
Because
which
if
plays into it in the
that's
next movie.
if that's the case, then I'm glad he did it, because the payoff in Gremlins 2 is worth every penny of
Yeah,
that
there you
scene
go.
in
So
Gremlins 1.
so go ahead, Katrina. Let's hear some thoughts, and then I have some other trivia bits that I want to throw at you guys. So go ahead.
You guys were talking about how, like, Harrison specifically, you were saying that the story feels like disconjoined in the first film,
Right.
and like I felt like that, but for the second one, I felt like the first one had a more linear, more understandable thing, as much as it's like completely implausible. But I mean, it's Gremlins, so
Yeah.
I can't really bat my eyes at the actions of the characters when there's literal gremlins in the film.
Right.
I think that's like for me, that's a big nitpick that I'd have to do for it. But I
Yeah, no, I
understand where
think
you're coming from.
yeah, I agree with you. I think that overall, like even though there's some weird inconsistencies, the movie holds up well enough on its own for me as a story. The story goes through, all the beats it goes through, characters drop in and out, some of the weird things like the inconsistencies of the Gremlins. I get
I was
the
not expecting Neil from Santa Claus in it. I will be completely honest. That
yeah,
caught me
yeah,
off
Gerald.
guard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that caught me so off guard.
Yeah. Well, and he actually has a bigger role in the original version of it, that he's like a nemesis to Billy the whole way through. And so it's just, yeah, it's funny. But yeah, and
Well,
no,
because
I
he's like being annoying about everything, and then he's also trying to steal his girl, and it's like,
yeah,
I,
yeah, like
oy vey.
he doesn't get the clue that she's not into him, that she's into
Yeah.
Billy.
Yeah.
So
Like they have that one sequence where I think she's waiting on them, and he says something, Gerald says something, and she responds to him, and she gives Billy a look, and Billy gives her a look, and it's this really, for me, I love like nonverbal communication in films,
right,
especially when the actors do it right. And I felt like that scene was great because it really showed the connection that Billy and Kate had
right,
without saying anything. And it really added a lot to me for understanding the connection they had.
yeah, no, I think so too. Yeah. So an interesting tidbit, the town of Kingston Falls, that like the downtown area right there, like the town center, that's the same set as Back to the Future, Hill Valley.
I thought it was. It
Yep.
looked
The
incredibly
theater, the
similar.
theater that blows up is the theater
Yeah.
that the DeLorean runs into.
Yep. Yep.
I don't know why, but it reminded me of like a Twilight Zone episode. I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. It's the Universal backlot.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so it's literally the same streets that you see in.
That's
You just
very
didn't see the
funny.
clock tower in this one at all.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it was like they got real close to showing it at one point, but they never panned over enough because they're looking down the street at the theater before it blows up, and
Hmm.
you just never see it. So I just thought that was an interesting, because this was put out the year before um, um, Back to the Future did. So
So technically, Gremlins did it first.
Gremlins did it first.
That's the Gremlins town. It's not the Back to the Future town.
Exactly. See, that's what I'm saying.
Um, real quick, one last thing about Gremlins 1 before we move on to Gremlins 2, which Gremlins 2 objectively the better film, I will always say. But
Subjective.
um objectively. Gremlins 1, best scene is the bar. That scene is the best
Oh,
scene.
with Kate trying
yes.
to, yeah, that's a great scene.
Yeah, like trying to keep up with the gremlins.
It's not just the gremlins, it's just real in general for customer service.
Right.
Which again, moving on to Gremlins 2, the fact that I'm saying the best scene of the movie is the bar, which is the most off the rails, insane scene in that movie, has a huge impact on my enjoyment of Gremlins 2. that is the scene that they decided to make the entire movie about.
Right. So it's interesting too because so this one utilized with the Mogwai and Gremlins, they were puppets. There's like
There's
I
a lot
think
of marionette stuff with the skeletons I noticed when they start melting.
Yeah. So these were all puppets, and then but they would break down a lot because obviously there was a lot of mechanics in the facial features and stuff.
Oh right, yeah, we need to talk about this.
Yeah, so there was a lot of this was used a lot. So this was part of the reason why they had the no bright lights thing, was to keep it dark so that you wouldn't see the problems with cables and stuff like that. So
that's funny.
Yeah, so that was an interesting part of it. Real quick though. That I prefer, honestly, like when you look at both of these back to back and stuff like that, you can tell that in the second movie they had an increase in the budget and the mechanics and stuff like that. Technology advanced better so that the gremlins in the second one had more facial features. You could see them walking and stuff. There was a lot more going on with them in that second movie, whereas this one, but I still prefer the look of Gizmo and the gremlins in this first one than I do in the second one. I don't know what it is.
I do too.
There's just something, just I don't know. Even the facial features are great in this first one, although the outside of Stripe, none of the other gremlins or mogwais have personalities. They're just just plain old regular creatures. There's
it's because 3 of them die before we even get to see them do anything.
True, but still. Anyway, what were you going to say about them being puppets?
Oh, so one of the things that we mentioned before the podcast that I wanted to talk about was that there is a lot of Baby Yoda in the Mogwais, in the way that they kind of react and move.
Yes, I think Baby Yoda was very influenced, but there was something else that was influenced as well. But go ahead.
I don't know what that's about. But yes. You're just talking about Furbies?
Yes, Furbies were influenced by were inspired by Gremlins. So
yeah.
I mean, it's an obvious like leap to it, but yeah.
But it was interesting to see the puppetry work and basically see that a lot of the groundwork for creating modern puppetry like Baby Yoda was honestly still I'm not sure if it was Henson or just a different puppetry group that was working on this film. But the puppeteers of the 80s were really at the top of their game in terms of creating very dynamic puppet systems. And so I'm very impressed. I actually just if anybody's interested in knowing more about weird Disney lore, there's a great channel out there called Defunct Land that just also did a documentary about animatronics and the origins of animatronics, and it felt very relevant in terms of the puppetry involved inside of both these movies.
All right, that's cool. There's another Back to the Future connection in this movie as well. The mother of Billy Peltzer. She's the mother of Marty's mom in 1955.
Okay.
Yeah, she plays Lorraine's mom. Yeah.
So I mean, pops up too much in the movie.
Yeah, no. So she, it's Steven Spielberg connection and stuff like that. So that probably helped out a lot. There's a neat little Easter egg in the movie too when his dad is at the convention. There's a couple of Easter eggs in that. One, Spielberg himself is the guy in the bicycle contraption riding around in
Mm-hmm.
the foreground in the
Yeah.
first scene. But in the background, there's H.G. Wells' Time Machine from the Time Machine movie in the
Mm-hmm.
background. And then when we go back to the scene afterward, it has vanished. And people are like
Oh,
looking there like, oh
okay.
my gosh, where did it go? So just little
Um,
goofy things like that.
if you're also unaware, the robot in that scene is
Yes,
actually
Robbie
from the
the
movie
robot.
is from Forbidden Planet.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I didn't say that one because that one's like a super obvious one, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many people know about Forbidden Planet, but
Probably maybe not as many now. My generation knew about it quite a bit. So
yeah.
but yeah, no. So but no, I like this movie. I like it a lot. I get why you guys don't love it as much. Understandable. It's fine. Part of that has to do with nostalgia for me, I'm sure. I absolutely loved this as a kid. This was one of those movies that I really enjoyed and had a great time with. And I don't watch it all that much. I don't remember. I don't think I ever real. I think maybe I showed it to you guys once when you guys were kids. I said, "Hey, watch this movie." But it's one of those things where I tried not to force too many of my movies on you guys. So
Oh well, if you
so
did, I remembered none of it.
yeah.
I
So
mean, I wasn't traumatized by this one. So
though actually the gremlin in the microwave does sound a little familiar now that I'm like thinking
Yeah.
back. Because that imagery of the gremlin baking in the microwave.
Do either of you guys have anything else you want to say about this movie before we jump into number two?
I
Uh
wish the actress for Kate was in more stuff because I think she's great.
She was in the 80s. She before this movie, she was in a movie called Fast Times at Ridgemont High in a very famous scene. She's one of the major characters and it has a very famous scene in it. You guys can look that up later. But it was in Judge Reinhold, who played Gerald in this movie, was also one of the major characters in that one as well. It's like a coming of age teen movie of the 80s.
Just I guess one last thing to say about Gremlins 1 was I was a huge fan of the the uh, t- a couple good moments, funny moments was um old lady getting thrown out of the window.
Yeah, Miss
Um
Deagle.
and to the the cops like panicking
Yeah, they're just like,
on their
we're going back. Well, because they were both high and drunk.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like this is like the most inept cops ever. So,
Yeah.
no, those were great parts for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, that's what makes this movie fun. There's a lot of comedy to it, but it's not like too far, which to me, again, the next movie goes a little too much into, like I said, self-parody.
Well, now let's talk about my
Yes,
favorite
let's.
Gremlins movie.
So, The Gremlins 2 came out in 1990, 6 years after the first movie. Joe Dante is back, finally, after they wanted him to make a sequel like right away. He said no. Then they tried to make it without him. They couldn't come up with an idea that was good enough. So they finally coaxed him back, and he said, "Give me complete control, and I will do it." So they did. And that's why it's as bonkers as it is,
And
because
it's
he
a
was just like,
masterpiece.
look, I am going to make the movie that I want to make, which is going to be a commentary on the first one and on sequels in general. And so, and I want to get into this with you too, Harrison, because you read a comment on Reddit about, people liking Gremlins and Gremlins 2, which one was their favorite. And somebody made the comparison that Gremlins and Gremlins 2 is like Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 because they up the comedy and they up the, whatever. I wholeheartedly disagree with this because Gremlins 2 cannot exist without Gremlins 1. You take all of the self-parody out of it, you have a very thin movie at best. Most of what is funny and good about Gremlins 2 is in conversation with the first movie. So you can't do that. Evil Dead 2 can exist completely without Evil Dead 1. You can watch Evil Dead 2 and know everything going into that movie. Like, you don't have to know anything that happened in the first one. partially because one, it's a partial remake of the first one because they had to redo some of the storyline from the first one, but also because it just continues the story rather than is a parody of the first one. Yes, they've jacked up the comedy in it, but they've also jacked up the horror in it as well. So that's why I don't agree with that statement that they are similar in any way, shape, or form, because Gremlins 2 is just a parody of the first one. It can't exist without the first one existing. So like people couldn't watch Gremlins 2 and understand all the jokes and references and everything else, the things like that her new thing about a holiday that traumatized her. That's not funny if you don't know the first one. You know what I mean?
Yes. No, I can agree on those grounds.
Okay.
I mean, I wasn't defending the one single Redditor.
True, but you agreed with it pretty hardcore when you told me. You're like, yeah, that's exactly it, and I was like, nope, I'm gonna have fucking words about that shit.
I
Don't mess with
like,
my Evil Dead.
I felt like Evil Dead. I felt like the comparison to Evil Dead, it wasn't a terrible one, but yes, it's of course not a like 99.9% accurate comparison, but I would say it's like a 60-40 to it. But no, Gremlins 2 for me was absolutely exactly what I wanted the first one to be after watching it. After watching it and going, man, I think one of the things I said to you after watching the first one was it felt like a Looney Tunes cartoon that just couldn't go as far as Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
And
no, you did. When I told you the thing about the Warner Brothers logo, you were like, oh, then that could mean they were going for a Looney Tunes feel. And I was like, well, and so you hadn't watched number 2 yet when you said that. And I was like, well, you're going to find out.
To the audience, real quick. I saw the shield. I knew what the shield meant. My dad is pretending like I didn't know and that he had to enlighten me.
No. I was telling you
I was aware of what the shield meant.
Right. But I was telling you that they had
going in that there was kind of a Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that they had to petition to use it, but
because I
knew that they were going for 70s. A Looney Tunes thing as soon as I saw it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, so this is going to be kind of like a funny movie, and then it was funny, but not Looney Tunes funny. And so I was like, okay, like by the end of it, I was like, I wanted it to go full Looney Tunes if it's got the shield at the front of it. And then the fact that like from the get-go in Gremlins 2, we don't just get the shield, but we get the Looney Tunes intro with Bugs Bunny and Daffy.
Yeah.
And we get this little exchange between them. And to your point about it being about sequels, Daffy basically calls out the fact that that essentially Looney Tunes was going on for so long and just pumping out comedy and pumping out like cartoons, that's kind of how Gremlins felt to the director, was that having them immediately come to him and go, oh, we need another one of these. He was like, no, like this isn't a cartoon where I'm just going to be pumping out Gremlins movies. Like, and so the fact that he kind of leans into that and pretty heavily by going like, okay, yeah, no, if you want me to make another Gremlins, here we go. Like now it's going to be a cartoon.
Right.
And for me, that's exactly, like, I understand that it's a commentary and a parody, but I almost wish that's what it was from the beginning. I wish because if this is what it is with him having no reins on him, I kind of wish I saw what Gremlins was before studio interference.
Well, and to be fair,
this was a better movie.
Well, for you, yes. This movie did not do well at the theater. It grossed only 41.5 million on a budget of 30 to 50 million. So it was not, it bombed and did not do well critically. It said it received generally positive reviews, but it has since developed a strong cult following. Obviously people like it because it's, again, it's a parody. It's when you watch the first one and you have your questions and everything like that, it directly references a lot of those, including a scene where Billy's trying to tell them all the stuff to avoid, water, light, or to use light to kill them, but to avoid feeding them and to giving them water and stuff. And they're like, well, wait, midnight win, So,
Hmm.
it was definitely questions people had, and they leaned
If it's got
into it.
something stuck in its teeth
Yeah,
before
yeah. What if
midnight,
it's
and
got
then
something stuck in its teeth? Um,
yeah.
yeah. So, real quick though, Katrina, how did you feel
Yes.
about this one?
Well, like I said earlier, I watched the first 20 minutes and then spaced out.
Right. Okay. Right.
Um,
Oh
so
man, this one held my attention the whole time.
no, not for me. Like I don't like movies where there's not dialogue. I've mentioned this before. I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast, but that's why I don't particularly totally like the John Wick movies, because there's not a lot of dialogue. And like, sure, the story can progress without it, and like
Right.
there's ways to do it. But I'm the type of person who needs that dialogue, or at least that nonverbal dialogue, like I mentioned before, between Kate and Billy, that progress that story along for me.
Right.
But because it was all the Gremlins, and I don't like, if I don't, were they still using puppets in this one? I don't
Yeah, they were
remember.
using puppets, but they also used some animation, obviously for
The
things like
electric gremlin.
the electric gremlin and the
Yeah.
flying gremlin and stuff. So
Okay. So for the
so yeah,
most part, it was
well,
like
and
you
this
can't.
time they had a much bigger they had a good budget, and they also had Rick Baker was
I
the
saw
creature
that in the
designer on
credits.
this. Yeah, so like they had huge dude guy come in to do it, and that's why
Huge
they all
dude.
had different faces, different personalities and such like that. So they
Yeah,
really leaned into creating unique personalities for each gremlin with this one,
which
which
was
is
I
great.
thought that was fun. And we
That's
still
No.
exactly
saw
what I
Kate
wanted.
struggle with
yeah.
Mogwai
Yeah,
in the house.
right.
That was funny.
Yeah. No, there
Um,
were great moments in this movie. I'm not saying this one's a bad movie in any way, shape, or
and
form. I
I love the Futterman. Like I love him. He is
Yeah.
so funny.
And that's a
I'm
funny thing
glad his
about it is
character
that
got more
yeah, because
airtime.
in the
I'm not
first
crazy.
in the first
Yeah,
movie,
that was
you think
awesome.
they die because they get plowed into by a bunch of gremlins inside of his tractor, and you
Oh, I didn't think they died.
well, I mean, that was the presumption, was that they died, because I mean, how are you going to survive being backed in the corner by that? Um, so the having them back in this one and just being explained that, oh no, they got out of it, but he's just a little on edge now. So, um,
WWII.
yeah,
Oh my God. The WWII and then the WWIII.
yeah,
It was a great callback.
yeah.
Yes.
So
No,
Dick Miller,
there's so many great callback jokes.
yeah, no, Dick Miller, he is a Joe Dante player. He's one of those actors that Joe Dante likes to use a lot. So,
Mm.
which is great.
Another thing
Go ahead.
about the movie is I don't remember who was talking about it in the film, but one of the characters mentioned something about suction cup things for cars.
Yeah, suction cup
And
mogwai.
Oh,
yeah,
right,
suction cup
yeah,
mogwai, and oh,
It's clamp.
yeah,
yeah,
Clamp,
it's
yeah.
Clamp. He's the one talking about it, and
Daniel
then
Clamp,
he
the
also
very
talks
thinly
about
veiled Donald
they
Trump.
could be in a parade, and I'm assuming those are callbacks to real life
Real life things
things.
that, yes, no, those were products. Yes,
But
like Gizmo was a
it
balloon
went
in
over
the
my
parade.
head
Yeah,
because I wasn't
yeah,
around
you didn't
then,
live during that
so
time. No, I'm telling you,
yeah,
Gremlins was fucking huge. Like, it's
walking
fucking huge. It is
walking
like
huge guys.
literally like crazy how popular they became. Yeah, no, there were suction cup mogwai. You would see people driving down the street, and in their car there was a freaking gizmo on inside their car, just suction cup to the inner window. So no, it's great.
Why don't we
But
have those anymore?
what?
Why don't we have those anymore?
Oh, I'm sure people do. I'm sure somebody's got them. I'm sure somebody's still selling them somewhere. I was talking to Donna about this recently, and she said she still has her gizmo that she
Oh
has had
wow.
since then.
Wow.
Um, yeah,
That's love.
Yeah, right. I'm telling you, people like this movie. A really interesting little trivia tidbit, real quick. The actress Haviland Morris, who plays Marla in this, Billy's boss, the redhead,
Yes.
she is the blonde girlfriend in 16 Candles.
Okay.
I knew you would. I knew you would do that, Katrina.
Wait, the one,
Yes, the
the one,
drunk one. That's yeah.
no, that's so
Yes.
fucked up.
Yeah. So
Oh,
yeah. So she's the same actress. So
wow. I have to
I
rewatch
knew
16 Candles now.
I knew I recognized her. Like I was like, who is she?
I love that
Like
you
the whole
knew
time
that I would react to that.
I know you like 16 Candles. So
I love, what's the director's name?
um John Hughes.
John Hughes. I
Yeah.
love John Hughes
Yes.
movies.
Yes. I
They're
know
great.
you're a big
Molly Ringwald, John
Pretty in
Hughes,
Pink and Breakfast Club fan.
Breakfast Club
Yeah.
number one,
Yeah.
man. I need to change my letterboxd.
But no, this one's got some great stuff going on in it. Again, there's some weird stuff happening in the movie. I like, it's kind of all over the place. There's no, like Katrina said, it feels kind of, for me, like there's definitely a story there, but it feels like more of set pieces. It's more of let's move things to each little thing. Let's have chaos in the lab. Let's have all of them congregate in the thing for a big musical number. You know what I mean? So
That was
this,
so
and
dumb.
I forgot to
It
have
was so
Katrina.
good.
I forgot to tell Katrina to watch this beforehand, but there's a Key and Peele skit about the creation, like the meeting for the creation of Gremlins 2. You'll have to watch it after we get off the
Okay.
podcast, Katrina, because it's hilarious. But and it's very like people love that skit. But it's so this is a movie that's great because of that. But again, it's more of a and there's fun characters and everything in this movie. It's not a bad movie, but because it is mostly a parody of the first one and more of a well, we want to do something bigger. We want to make fun of certain things like the movie reviewer who gets taken out by the
Yes.
Gremlins. He is
Yes.
actually a movie reviewer who did not like the first movie. He was basically saying word for word his review
That's
when he gets
amazing.
taken out. Yeah. So I mean, he got to
I
play
love
fun with
that.
that, and yeah,
And we
no.
haven't
So
even touched on Hulk Hogan.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
better left
Oh,
unsaid.
oh
But the
my God.
sequence itself is great because there's a moment where the film, like it's as if you're watching it in a theater, and the film burns and breaks, and then it goes into this fourth wall break, where you're in a theater, and the movie guy, the movie manager goes in and tries to get Hulk Hogan to like tell the Gremlins to knock it off. So it's great too because they didn't want to put that in the movie because the studio didn't want to because they were afraid people would think the movie actually broke. Even though like within 2 seconds the Gremlins are starting to do shadow puppets on the thing before it
Oh my
transitions.
God. The Shadow Lincoln.
So
It was great.
so the funny thing about this is, I told Harrison about this already, that on the video release of it, on the VHS copy of it, they changed that sequence. It no longer was the film burn, it was the movie scrambling. Like VHS would sometimes, the tracking on it would get messed up, and then it switches channels, and then it's like three of the um, uh, Gremlins having a shootout with John Wayne, and then John Wayne going, "Hey, put this movie back to the way it's supposed to be," and then it goes back into the movie like it does in the movie itself. So
That's amazing.
it is on the like on the Blu-ray release as well. Like the extra footage is on there. It's actually on Movies Anywhere. So if you want to watch that, go to the Movies Anywhere app and check that out. But yeah, no, it's a good movie. I don't dislike it. I don't love it as much as the first one. The first one's more original story and just fun in its own thing, whereas this one's more of a commentary on the first movie and on kind of the
The phenomena.
yeah, the phenomena of it, the comment, like the criticism of it, um and um and
Yeah.
just everything about sequels and stuff like that, and just commentary about um you know the times also, like because they're very clearly making fun of the 80s, real estate culture and um diet fads, and at the time, like genetics were like a huge thing. So that plays into a whole thing that we haven't even gotten into, which is a part of something that Harrison really enjoyed about the movie as well. Go
Oh
ahead and
well.
talk about that, Harrison.
Oh yeah. So there's one of my favorite aspects of Gremlins 2 is that the Gremlins have the newfound ability to mutate when they
Right.
encounter alternate DNA. And there's this great idea in the movie that there is just this cartoonish lab inside of the inside of
this
this
smart
building.
Yeah.
Yeah, inside of this smart building with acid containers that just say "Don't throw on face."
Yeah.
On them, and just fantastic, just things like that. But they start drinking all of these different concoctions and DNA that give them these newfound abilities. One of them drinks like a spider DNA becomes a spider gremlin. One of them drinks
That's
bat
Mohawk,
DNA,
the
and then they
new
becomes a
leader. Yeah.
bat becomes a bat gremlin, and then there's just a lot of fun, unique gremlins that come out of it. One of them gets electrocuted, so he becomes an electric gremlin.
Right. Gets trapped in the phone system.
Oh my God, so funny. It was so funny. So not to spoil some of the jokes, but there's a great joke with the electric gremlin and a phone. So
Yeah.
just absolutely, if you've not watched it, please watch Gremlins 2. Just like you said earlier, Dad, that if you're going to watch Gremlins 2, to your point about it not being like Evil Dead 2, um, back in the day with DVD double movie, like double features,
Right.
you would absolutely want to get the DVD double feature of Gremlins 1 and this one.
Oh yeah.
To be able to appreciate this one to the fullest degree, because this one is golden, and in terms of, for me, is the better of the two. But you're right, it's only that way if you've seen Gremlins.
Right. Yeah.
Which arguably, to your point about how popular Gremlins was at the time, everyone had seen Gremlins.
Right.
And so having everybody come back to the movies to see this parody movie of it, honestly, pretty smart. Like,
Yeah,
pretty
no.
smart to kind of bait and switch people on it. But yes, but also Christopher Lee is the leader of the lab, which is fantastic. Like kind of reprising a lot of his like Hammer horror vibes in terms
Right.
of this like mad scientist character. And some of my favorite
Dr.
lines.
Cushing Catheter, by the
Yes,
way. That's his
Dr.
name.
Catheter.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite lines of the movie come from him, like I can give you some diseases, or a moment.
That whole
like, I
sequence
already
where they're
have
talking
the
about the
flu.
flu. Yeah,
Yeah, I
that
already
whole
have the
sequence
flu. I'm
is
looking
so
for.
fucking funny.
Yeah, like when he first is introduced, I already have the
Yes.
flu.
And then
I
he
need-
fucking takes her tissue
Yeah.
and tells the
And then
dude
gives-
analyze it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bro.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Every moment that Christopher Lee is on screen is a golden moment.
No,
in
it's
that
definitely
movie.
hugely
Even
great.
the moment when he reaches into the cabinet and a gremlin is like up to his elbow.
Yeah.
Like in
Yeah.
terms of eating him. It's fantastic. Everything
Yeah.
with him in the movie is fantastic. Also later on when he's like, I swear I'll never do anything morally evil again.
No, he's great. You mentioned
Like he has a
this
full
bit.
character arc in this
Yeah.
movie.
Well, you mentioned this bit too, because he comes in out of one of the other labs, comes in from the side, and then chaos has erupted. All the gremlins are in there and like drinking things and doing stuff and everything, but he's carrying this pod, and you wanted to know
Please
what that was
enlighten
about.
me. Yes, please
So
enlighten me
that
what the
pod-
pod was, because I
yes.
lost my shit at seeing him carry this giant pod into the room with no explanation.
It's a seed pod from the Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, perfect. Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
So, which was
is
also
actually
referenced in
the
the
movie.
first movie.
Yeah, the movie that they're watching in the
Yes.
first movie.
Yep.
So that's funny.
It's a continuous joke. It's like a carryover joke from the first movie. A
Okay,
carryover
well, that's great.
reference. So yeah.
But no, just God, Gremlins 2, it's fantastic. Watch Gremlins 1 and then immediately watch Gremlins 2. That is the best way to experience
No, and
it.
there's definitely, like I said earlier, Daniel Clamp is a parody of Donald Trump at the time. Definitely not who he has become now, but even then he was a joke. So to the public at large. So, you know, it was very, very thinly veiled joke, real estate developer. He even like at the end, as I said, the one character's name is Marla. And he's, you know, flirting with Marla. Marla Maples was Donald Trump's second wife. So that was a in joke there as well. So yeah, it's yeah.
But yeah, there's real quick, just on the topic of just strange things also in that movie. Some of my favorite moments are just little moments like randomly he like changes clothes in the
Yeah.
lobby.
Yeah, he keeps just changing clothes. Yeah.
It's very strange. He just keeps
Yeah.
changing clothes. There's no explanation for it, but it's fantastic. Um as we've already mentioned, there's a callback joke to Kate's horrific Santa Claus story
Yes.
about why she doesn't like President's Day.
Yeah.
Um, which you'll just have to watch the movie
Yeah.
to find that one out because that one's also a fantastic one. Also just at poor time in the movie to have it occur.
Yeah, no,
Um,
absolutely the wrong time, just like it was in the first movie. And just,
um,
you know, no.
just a lot of like and also just thank God Billy does something in this movie because I
Oh,
was so frustrated with Billy in the first one that I was so happy that he actually had some agency in this one.
so I think it's funny too because in the first movie they have to sideline Gizmo a lot. He's just in Billy's backpack for a large portion of the middle part of the
No,
movie.
he's Baby Yoda. That's why I thought of him.
So but that was because he was basically broken at that point. He wasn't working as well, so they couldn't have him. That's why at the end of the movie is him in a car because it also took out the need for him like wandering around and stuff like that. It was supposed to be different. So they put him in the car. And so uh then he so I think they kind of parodied that in this one too because Gizmo gets sidelined. He's stuck in the air vent for a while. And you know, then he ends up having this stupid montage of him trying to become Rambo. Um it's just
Hey, it was perfect for the character.
no, it's perfect for the progression of this movie. Especially.
No,
So
not just that, but that's it felt very in character for Gizmo
right.
because he was a huge fan of TV.
Yeah,
So it
no,
made
no, no,
sense
no.
that
I
he would
know it was a
base
plot
his
point in the
like
first movie because he was like, "You showed him TV."
yeah,
So yeah, yeah. It's just
that's great.
it has some weird stuff. The right hand man of Daniel Clamp, the kind of really bad guy. He
The manager who apparently works every day.
yes, and he only gets a half day off now to
Yes.
recuperate from all this. He um he's been a regular of Joe Dante movies also. He's in The Howling and in Inner Space as well. So
Okay, okay.
so he's just one of the he's one of his regulars along with Dick Miller. So yeah, so but it's a fun movie. I enjoyed it. But I just definitely think that it's uh definitely better. You have to watch the first one to get most of the really good jokes in this one. But I can see where there's a lot of people who prefer this one. Joe Dante himself prefers this one over the first one.
Well, there we go.
You know, but you know, but again, it's in conversation with that first one. You can't have this one. Like if you had, and that's why I'm saying there's a middle ground where you make like a version of these two movies that meshes well and is a lot of fun, but is also a lot of horror too. Um, the first movie, Gremlins, did inspire a ton of copycats that came out afterward. Things like Munchies and Ghoulies. I believe the Critters series was influenced as well because I think those came out afterward. I'm doing a quick look real quick to see if it is mentioned. Uh, Yeah, these include ghoulies, troll, hobgoblins, and munchies. So, uh, so those, yeah, all those movies are definitely influenced by it. It was just a bunch of little critter type movies that came out in its wake, trying to capitalize on it. But none of them had the success that Gremlins did. Um, they all had, some of their own little cult followings, but that was about it. So, Katrina, anything else you want to say about this second movie? I know you didn't watch it, so I know you probably don't have as much to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it I think it did what it was trying to do.
Yeah,
So
I've
just
actually
wasn't
met.
for me.
Yeah, I've actually met. Uh, uh, oh God, I'm completely blanking on his name. Zach Galligan, the actor who played
Oh,
Billy
yes.
Peltzer. I have a picture with him at the store I used to work at. Um, they would do signings occasionally, and I think he actually lives here in Georgia. So that's why he was an easy get. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, it was he was a nice guy. Um, he's been in some other stuff like the what are they called, the Waxwork movies, and some other random stuff. Um, but that's all I have to say about it. I enjoy the movies. I thought they would be a fun addition to our holiday, especially the first one. Obviously, the second one's not set during Christmas or any holiday that we know of. But it's the first movie's a fun little holiday horror. If you like that kind of thing, obviously Harrison wasn't as up on it. Katrina wasn't as up on it. But I enjoy it and lots of other people do. So if you enjoy those movies, definitely or if you enjoy movies like this and you haven't seen these yet, definitely give it a try. Um, and then let me know which one is your favorite. Uh, the first one or the second one. So all right,
right.
guys. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on for another year. Next year, I'll try to have something else interesting and maybe a little bit more fun. um,
Oh, I mean, I had a blast.
yeah,
Gremlins
well,
2
I
was
mean, with
definitely worth
Gremlins
it.
too, but that's not the holiday horror one.
Oh, I
Um,
didn't care. Gremlins 2 was worth it.
and meanwhile, Katrina didn't really overly care about either one.
Hi.
What?
I said hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It just didn't tickle my
It,
fancy,
it
I
didn't connect
guess.
with you. Yeah. Here's my thing. All I know is that it connected with my grandson, and that's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah. You know what? I was watching
I,
Gremlins 2 and he came and knocked on my door, opened up my door. I had it paused on the TV. He
yeah,
didn't even see any of the characters. He saw Billy
yeah.
and said, "Are you watching Gremlins?"
I had it
And then
playing.
he
I was
forced me to come out to the living room and listen to the Gremlins theme song.
That's
There we
so
go.
funny. I love that he loves the Gremlin soundtrack.
It was
He
very cute.
especially loves the one song
The theme
from it,
song.
the like the
It's in the
main
credits.
theme. Yeah.
Yeah.
He loves that song. So he will
He's so
listen to that
cute.
soundtrack all day, every day. Um, but no, I love that. It reminds me of Katrina being loving Seed of Chucky at 3 years
Which
old. So
I don't remember.
I know you don't remember, but he's not going to remember loving Gremlins either.
That's true.
So,
Yeah.
so all right, guys. Well, I appreciate you guys coming back on for another year. Hopefully, we'll get you guys back on. Hopefully, a little bit sooner. You guys been in and out throughout the year as it was, but
Yeah.
try to get you guys on for something cool.
Get
Maybe
us
we'll.
get us something for
Maybe more
President's Day.
time.
Yeah, no. What'd you say, Katrina?
Um, I said I might have more time next year.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because
I'm still gonna have 2 jobs, school and hockey now.
but I
So
have less school. So,
yeah, maybe.
by the way, hockey, if you're not into it, get into it. It's a fun sport to watch and play. Do it.
Yes, yes. She has now joined a women's league here, and she has enjoyed watching the women's hockey teams and is rooting for what team now?
The Ottawa Charge,
The
even
Ottawa
though
Charge.
they've lost the past two games, but it's okay. We love them.
Right? Hey, there's a ton of people who root for losing teams for years. So just as New York Mets fans, you know.
Yeah. Also, I think I'm a Winnipeg Jets fan if you're an NHL fan. So.
There you go.
Because they used to be the Atlanta Thrashers. They moved up to Winnipeg
Oh,
to the
okay.
Winnipeg Jets. So I feel like I'm obligated to like them. But
And see,
apparently they're
that's-
doing well this season. So you know what? Might as well.
And see, and if I were gonna like ever watch hockey and like root for somebody, it'd probably be the San Jose Sharks, because that's, you know, where I come from.
That's
So.
true. I have a friend. I have a friend who likes them.
The
Because,
San Jose
they
Sharks.
they live in California, so it
Oh,
makes sense.
yeah.
But yeah.
All right. All right, guys. Well, again, I appreciate it and thank you. And we'll hope to get you guys both on either on this show or on our own kind of sister episode type things that we've talked about doing.
Yeah.
If we can get those going, we'll one off those once in a while when we have the time. So
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again, and have a good night. And until next week, everybody, stay creepy.
Bye.
All right, that's all, folks.
Thanks for listening. If you like what you've heard, please consider giving the show 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. Music for the podcast is Gratitude, composed by Harper Smith. You can follow the podcast by going to creepyandgeeky.com and clicking on any of the social links. If you'd like to follow me, you can find my links at geekthulu.com. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more on TeePublic or by donating to the coffee page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.